Welcome to No Rules Berlin. And the title today is I Don't Care If You Worked at Google. And it's the idea that when you're angel investing and people come with their slide, we have a great team. Today, a lot of young people really care about their brand and that they worked at Google or Uber, or I'm an ex-Facebook manager and they were there like for 6 months and all what they care is the brand. But the secret is there's probably 25,000 people who were product managers at Google. So it doesn't differentiate you at all why you should build like a $1 billion company. And I guess both of us have our own experiences with the tech world and especially like great teams and what makes it that a team is really good. And I guess just focusing on the brand today is probably the wrong strategy for, first of all, investing in a team, but also when you're a founder, really the credentials, I guess, are not the things that matter the most. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And I think, especially with this X, you often see this on LinkedIn and what have you, right, or on slide decks, where they say X Google, and it's perceived nowadays like a hyped certificate from a university or something. But we know that it doesn't mean actually that much, because even that doesn't matter if you're like ex-Googler or went to a certain university or something. We've experienced ourselves that sometimes people are not really what they seem to be because they have these tags or labels on top of their head. But I think what it actually means is that you had the opportunity to get educated or trained on the things that matter or required to build great products and services. Because Google, let's take the example of someone writes down ex-Googler or something. I believe the only thing it means is that you had the opportunity to execute in an environment where the environment it tells you what is actually important to make a great product or service and how to prove that, how to run experiments and what have you. So it's more, yeah, it's like an education, and that is not exclusive actually to Google or similar places. Anyone can actually acquire these things elsewhere, like from good books and educating themselves, basically. So
yeah, and also like what I think is particularly interesting is there's a false logic by young founders. So yes, taking for example artificial intelligence and deep learning, every single person who was like doing deep learning and was like in Canada at this professor who made the neural networks with ImageNet, every single person was working at Alphabet, at Google, at DeepMind, at one of those. Every single person there was at one point of his time in the career working at Google. But and that's why, yes, it's true that Google has amazing talent. And taking the example of AI, yes, there is a correlation that the best people in the industry worked at some time at their career at Google. But here's the mistake. Young people come out of university, have zero experience, zero knowledge, zero network, and all what they care is the brand. Oh, if I work at Google, I get venture funding. If I worked at Google, I can do that. And I guess that's exactly the false thing to look for when you're young and in your new industry or when you're working, is focusing on the appearance and the credential versus the real knowledge, the real network, the real value creation. And that's why I think when I took the title, I don't care if you worked at Google, it means, yes, it's great if you worked at Google, but I care about totally different things if I should write an angel investment.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a couple of side effects of that mentality, or people walking around with that with that perception. One is that I, from my personal experience, can tell that when I started when I was thinking about starting the current startup Television AI, I thought, hey, if I look at what kind of crazy skills Google has and Amazon and Microsoft with their 5,000 AI researchers and what have you, and they're not tackling these things that I want to tackle. And if I look at what they offer and the quality and what have you, I shouldn't even start that. I'm not nobody. I can't bring any value if compared to these guys. But that's like totally wrong. Like you're good enough. There's this phrase, I'm not sure who said that, but there was this cool phrase where someone said, if you're good enough to iterate for your ideas, then you're good enough for the market, and there's nothing that can stop you except of things like regulations and stuff like that. So I don't know, if you have a product that is health, a business or something, then of course, yes, there's some regulations for good reason. But if you, for example, with television AI, where we provide these machine learning models and computer vision techniques that we apply to these problems and offer these products, you are good. If you can iterate, if you understand the business, if you understand and talk to your customers, and you can actually grab the issue and understand the dynamics of these techniques and machine learning and how a convolutional neural network works, and then for this particular use case, how you can apply it and try out different ideas, you get good enough for the market. There's nothing that can actually stop you. Actually, it's even better than that, because if you come with the passion, the interest, maybe even some skills because you worked in the field, and you have the passion and you study these things for a year to apply machine learning and computer vision models, then you're actually even better off than compared to someone that is at Google, maybe because it's such a niche. You're going the typical, if we take that from the book from Peter Thiel, like you find your niche, like PayPal did back then with the eBay power sellers. You find your niche, like what we did with the broadcasters and publishers for specific things, that we want to own that category or that niche. Basically, we're actually even better off because we bring the passion to solve these issues, to address these things. And it's a totally wrong perception to say, if I'm not like a senior AI researcher at Google with 5, 6, 7 years of experience, I shouldn't even start it. I shouldn't even approach it. And that's totally wrong. And I think that's partially also because of these wrong labels and perceptions that happen through this stupid branding approach from people.
Yeah, and for me, like, I'm a bit allergic to that, because in my first life, I went to law school, and I was exactly like that when I was 19, 20, and I looked for all the credentials, like working in the German parliament, working at the big private equity law firm, getting the credentials and all of that stuff. And then when I transitioned into tech, I was so enlightened and freed that people cared about the substance, about building great products, about really changing something, and not credentialism. And so I'm super allergic when I now see 20-year-old people that are like, hey, I worked at DoorDash. And then you're like, what did you do? And they're like, yeah, actually, I was an intern at a VC fund, and we invested in DoorDash, and I was having some meetings with them. And you're like, okay, so you basically didn't do anything, and you don't have any knowledge. And so I'm super allergic to that. But switching gears a bit, I guess the question is, what makes a great team? And for me personally, a great team is always somehow organizing around a secret that they discovered along their journey. And so very often they work at some frontier technology company where they discovered an insight, and this insight is now the insight and the secret for a new company. That's totally fine. But I guess it needs to come from the substance. And when today all of those people are job hopping every 6 to 12 months, a new job, like, how do you even want to develop insights when you say, oh, I worked at Facebook, I worked at Google, I worked at Uber, and I'm 21 years old, and each company I worked 3 to 6 months. Like, what insights do you actually want to develop? What knowledge do you want to develop? And that's where I'm personally looking a lot. Mostly, I want to hear the story of the team and the founders in order to know, oh, what's your story? Why do you end up doing what you want to do now? And this story needs to be very straightforward and clear. And I guess what's interesting with your startup, your story is 100% clear how you came up. And that's a funny part. When we were back in Palo Alto back in 2019, I guess, I will never forget, because that was the founding moment of your startup, and I was so happy to be part of it and being close to you.
That was funny, because back then I was working for this European technology company, quite large one. And I was in this golden, cave or whatever you want to call it. Like, you had a good pay they paid me good money and what have you, but you worked like 60, 70, 80 hours per week usually. And then I realized after I helped basically your startup back then to a little bit here and there with the enterprise related questions to give you some impulse and signals, but it made me realize that I should actually jump on this thing and try out this whole thing that I have passion for. And just coming back to this, how actually even earlier I broke out of that perception that, hey, I shouldn't even start it because I'm not a senior AI researcher at Google for the 5, 6, 7 years now. It actually happened to me when back in 2012 or so, when I went to the first hackathon that I attended. And I was an engineer by heart. So I was scared that I thought, hey, these people that go to hackathons, they must be like crazy genius guys and people that know it all and crazy, no competition, I can't do anything. And at the end, I was so focused with the others that I surrounded around myself, with the team that we had, that at the end we overachieved and we won the hackathon. And that showed a little bit like actually you can compete, like you're good actually, you're good enough and you can achieve these things. And then we started going to other hackathons across Europe and even one hackathon at Menlo Park at Facebook. I remember in San Francisco, a couple more. And then it was like, okay, so I can compete actually with these people that are actually working at Google and working at Facebook and what have you, and come up with ideas that are worth something. Like it's in the context of hackathons, of course, but it shows your mental capabilities and your creativity and what have you. You're actually good enough. It doesn't mean that because you don't have these labels that everyone is proudly putting on top of their CVs and what have you, that you're not good enough. And that totally broke my perception back then. And I had to rethink what it means actually that who I am and that I can do these things. And there's like many people like that. And later, when I was working at this corporation, I thought, hey, this is maybe a sort of similar moment. I should maybe now think, should I actually try this? And I think I should try this because maybe I have a wrong perception that I can't bring value. And the reality, after starting the startup and having many broadcasters in Germany signed up, the 2 public broadcasters and what have you for, like, you would think in the beginning, I would have thought maybe like this would never be possible, but actually is possible that they trust you. And along the way, even if you don't have, I don't know, crazy 5, 6 years of experience at Google building the craziest models and what have you, if you study it and you're good enough, again, to iterate on your ideas and the concepts and have conversations with your customers and prospects on these topics that bug that the pain points and the needs, basically, if you're good enough to understand that, to iterate, then you're good enough. There's nothing that actually can stop you. You should just go out and try it. And actually, you'll be surprised how far you can get. And you will bring value because you exercising that, understanding the context and understanding the techniques and what have you, and iterating through that and trying out, that already is tremendous value to your customers. And people that actually, I think, are not aware of that, aware of the fact that you can do this, even if you don't have these labels on the top of your CV.
Yeah,
and I guess also what's very interesting is when you really take angel investing business. So like you look for the 5,000x, the 10,000x. So you really look for radical founders that go through hell in order to make stuff work that just doesn't exist today in the world. And what is funny is today I had this amazing conversation with 2 founders, and they have a crazy idea. So the idea is basically esports. why don't, like, they're 20. So why don't you get paid at work playing esports?
And I was like,
okay, that's crazy. So they believe that esports actually increases productivity and playing video games, and they now want to build a platform that you get paid and can play esports at work. And here's the problem with the founders. So both of them have great credentials and went to business schools, and they are afraid to put their reputation on the line and really go all in. And go all in means, what's the name of the company? Why does it not sound like esports? Why do they wear AirPods? Why don't they look like esports gamers? Why do they look so freaking professional. And the entire conversation today was like, guys, you're not crazy enough. The idea is insane. Like, why should employers pay people to play video games during work hours? This is insane. So if you want to make it work, you guys need to be insane. You can't now try to still be the people who went to the good universities. You need to be the esport gamers, but the most radical ones. And we have exactly this today, where because of the credentials and the reputation, they are actually afraid
to go all
in on their crazy idea. And of course, if you have
Interesting.
a crazy angel investing idea, you only get the funding if you're the crazy one and not the smart one. And this is where I'm personally, I was really a bit, to be honest, disappointed today, because you can't change the character. So they have the radical idea. I guess they have to see that is really interesting, but probably their reputation and their culture holds them back to go all in. And if you don't go all in on this, you will not attract the right people, you will not attract the right investors, you will not attract the right early customers, and then it will not work. And that's the part where I'm like, really, I'm like, the biggest margin is in the crazy ideas, but then the founders should be not the ones who care the most about the credentials. That's what my experience like about this.
That's so funny. So basically, you're saying they at the moment they think their status is still great. They, I don't know what grades they finished their schools and what have you. Now they're tiptoeing basically the water of this idea, and they want to have but they don't go all into the water basically because they fear that it will be a failure, and they need like quick confirmation that this actually will work out. Otherwise, they would not go all in basically. And maybe that's a lack of passion for it. I don't know, because otherwise, if you just speaking from experience, I gave up like my 6 figures job. So, I mean, back then, remember the conversations we had. Like, I just said, this is too important to me. I have the passion. I will just make it work. And then just gave up this job. And maybe it's lack of passion for it. I don't know. Because at the end, what the founding team has to have is interest and enjoy what they're doing. Otherwise, they will not establish this learned all mentality, addressing issues and improving on their weaknesses and what have you. And they're not believing in maybe on the work that it matters and improves lives of others or has a positive impact, basically. So maybe it is a passion thing. I don't know, but it's interesting, observation.
Yeah, I guess
It might be passion, but it's also like in those institutions, and like in the institutions you learn a lot of things, but most important, you also learn to not cross the lines, like to paint inside the box, to
paint inside
the lines. He was like, I'm not a rocket engineer, but I'm building a space company. I'm building a rocket company. And he got successful by actually constantly saying, I'm doing it my way. And that's how he then attracted the people who were actually fed up with the institutions. And of course, now he has a lot of NASA engineers and Lockheed Martin and so on, but he exactly got those ones that were actually fed up with the systems. And that's where I think that's then the right way to do it. But very often, especially those founders, and you can't blame them. They're very young, but I'm just disappointed because they have a great idea. And if they would go all in, they could raise like 5 to 6 million pre-seed, pre-product next week. But also the investors, they don't want to support someone who is afraid. They want to support someone who is fully, as you mentioned, mission-driven, passionate, and says, I don't care about my credentials. I go all in on the idea. And this is like where I think, I don't know how to change it, but I think today a lot of people just believe, oh, I look on YC, I look on Crunchbase, oh, that's how the founders present themselves on LinkedIn. So I basically copy and paste, or I try to get quickly those credentials because then I might get funding. But it's actually, I guess it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, and also just as a side note, it's so funny, this fear of your status and clean West and what have you. Even if you fail, like in 5 years, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And I would even say that people would, if I would look at someone's resume and see that they tried something and failed, I would even say that this person actually is even, is better off, because they understood to face the failure, face issues and address them and what have you. Maybe they don't succeed and what have you, but that's fine, because you have someone that actually can face failure and issues and address them and try out things and face the truth and understand what are the opportunities, like what can we do, is there something we can do, and if it's not the case that you can't do anything about it and you will fail, that's fine, but you're much better off than compared to someone that fears to speak up, fears to do something, tackle the issue, get the dirty work done, and to be honest, like nobody cares in 5 years, like what the hell, like you're actually better off, and that's, I'm not sure how you want to change it, but it's so sad that people, especially young people, that they get this wrong, I don't know, wrong perception. I'm not sure who actually puts it into their brains, but that they think they have to have 100%, like 100 out of 100 wins, basically. Otherwise, they're a failure. And that's so totally wrong. Instead, just try out things that you have passion for and go, all in, or have a certain mixed strategy or whatever, but do it. Follow the things that matter to you, and because you will excel once you do. And only if you do that, at some point, then you have to hire people, and your job as a CEO then is to attract these people. How do you want to attract people if you don't show the passion for your company? Yeah. So it's just sad that some people have this perception that.
Yeah.
And I guess also one thing is, it's like another thing is what I look for in great teams is actually that they think for themselves. So they have their own thought process, and a lot of people just outsource the thinking process to those brands. So, and it applies to all social capital status symbols. So it can be a watch, it can be a car, it can be whatever, the right university, the right credentials. That's just what I learned now is, like, how do you want to build a unique business? How do you want to build a business that's, because unique for me means highly profitable at scale, where nobody else was looking for, and there's a margin. Because if it's already known and everyone is there, the margin is competed away, or there's already a big competitor with network effects and defensibility that you can't anyways attack. So the uniqueness of your thinking kind of defines who actually, like, where do you go with your company, and the team you're building is going to be the company you build. So it's just like going then in on the VCs that care about only the credentials, because they don't even want to understand the idea. This is just, for me, like, maybe people do it because it's so effective, but on the other hand, like, why would you do a startup? Because the salary is lower, the idea you should really have passion for. It's way easier to just work at Google. Why do you want to be ex-Google? If you really want to have a good life, just work for Google for 10 years and do it, and don't do anything else. So going into startups or investing into those teams, for me, it just doesn't make sense from an economics perspective.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Maybe one more thing, as we speak about teams and startups and what have you, let's talk about culture a little bit. Because I think, and we talked about this in the past a few times, what culture means in a company, right? So I think it's the top priority in the company to have a great culture. And I see companies like an onion. So sounds a bit funny, but let me explain. So in the core of your onion, you have culture, where everything originates, the passion that people bring, etc., etc. And then the next layer is like the capabilities that you have inside the company, and then the next layer is concepts, meaning your products and business models and what have you, which will then attract customers. And the reason why I see it like that, this is not my idea. This is something I somewhere picked up along the way, and then a little bit refined it. I think if you allow to or establish the right culture in the company, it will automatically, without you forcing people that direction or management overhead on top, will lead people to learn the right capabilities to build the concepts, or meaning the projects and products and what have you, that will attract then again the customers. and it goes even full circle, because then it does not just attract the customers, but also the next wave of interesting employees. We had this example with SpaceX, where people want to work for SpaceX because it's so cool, because they achieve things and they have these cool rockets and what have you. So it's not just the customers, but also the talent it attracts without you actually investing in it. Right? So you get that just for free, basically, just because you have established the right culture. And I think when you look at the culture, just from experience also in previous jobs, there you often are faced with this know-it-all type of culture, like these people that work in the company for quite a while and they think they are like the center of knowledge and they know it all, they have seen it all. What do you want with your stupid idea? We shouldn't try that. It's not, I tell you, I've seen it all. You shouldn't go that way. And instead what you actually want is learn all culture, right? So where people try out ideas and they are not feared to be shamed because of their failures, that maybe some management decision was wrong, maybe there was a bug that they have created with their code and what have you. And it gets tremendously hard when you have a lot of these know-it-all people with their egos around people that actually want to embrace and thrive in that learn-all culture. And then at that point, once you realize that it gets quite a job to actually take care of them, because you as a CEO, or if you just, let's say, an enterprise, you have a team, you have to it's your duty to protect these people and what have you. So I think culture is like the most important thing. Yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess just like from a purely tactical point of view with culture, I noticed that a lot of people talk about mission, vision, values, but they don't really live by it. And that was one of the key learnings at my previous startup, Hackaby. And that was like one of the first ones that really exploded. And we tried to build all of this along the way, like all of this culture, mission, vision. And in the end, we were just super confused and didn't know at all what. And now I'm very different. So actually, I learned now also what I don't like. And I'm basically building the culture around what type of company I want to be part of, because that's the beauty. And I guess it's really important early on. It's not about writing down your values. It's not writing down your vision. It's really about understanding it and having, I must say, I can clearly, by one sentence, you need to have the point of view what you're doing. And this point of view should not change. And all this iteration and stuff, like iterating and new features and blah and new people, in the end of the day, the point of view, the secret, it needs to be 100,000% clear from the beginning until the end. And that's what I learned the hard way. In order to build a great culture, you're not allowed to break the promise of what you're doing. And one of the decisions I'm most proud of actually was at Hackaby, we had a super aggressive mercenary. It was Uber for developers. So we knew, okay, the culture is like Uber. And that was when Uber was still, like now it's totally criticized, but it was like Uber. So ultra aggressive. And when we couldn't get to $1 billion and the path was not clear, one of the best decisions we did was to stop the company, because we knew all of the people we attracted signed up to build this $1 billion company. And the one thing I'm least proud of is that we hired people who didn't believe that it's possible to build $1 billion company. That was the biggest mistake, I would say. And so having the culture clear, but not having it on like a tangible result, like our point of view was like, hey, we're all in our 20s, now let's build $1 billion company. That's a way you can build a culture, but it's not the one I actually want to build again. And so having this point of view around solving a problem for a customer, and then having the culture that has exactly this point of view. And just going back to the esports example of the morning when I had this angel investing call, if you can build an amazing culture and you don't need to write down your core values and stuff for the first 10 to 20 people, just by having your point of view extremely clear and don't consult or advise on it, but like really believe in it, I guess you're going to attract the right people.
that was again very insightful. We're on episode number 6, so let's see what we'll do for number 7.
Good day. Bye bye.
Cool.
Take care.
You too. Bye.